What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about A.X.E. Judgment Day number 4 by Kieran Gillen and Valerio Schiti. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what happens when the entire world faces celestial judgment. We're also going to talk about what will it take for Druig to unleash Uranus, the most dangerous Eternal who ever lived, one last time. And more importantly, when the world faces celestial judgment, is it true that all you need is love?
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
So one of the first things to talk about here in this, and I'm gonna go ahead and apologize right now, this video is probably gonna be kind of long, because there's just really a lot to talk about here, but one of the things that you take note of when you first pick up this issue is that the world is in shambles. And I'm not saying this because, the progenitor has done anything. No, nothing's actually happened yet. The progenitor is still weighing judgment and still assessing each and every individual person. Every living being on the planet Earth is being judged, even the actual planet itself, not just its people. Now that said, everyone is losing it. Folks are rioting in the streets. There's violence everywhere because everyone has their own opinion of what's right and what's wrong. Everyone believes that their side is right. Individual people are fighting among themselves, to the point that not even Captain America can inspire them enough to turn away from resorting to violence. Now, this kind of leads me into what is going on with the judgments of everyone as a whole, because over the course of these past few issues, lots of different characters have been faced with celestial judgment, and we've talked about each and every one of them just about. Now, this time, we're going to be talking about a lot more people. First and foremost is going to be the human Tom, who is tied to the Hex Phoebe Reginax. Tom has learned nothing. This isn't anything new. We've constantly talked about Tom over the course of the last few issues of Judgment Day. He's a guy who just blames mutants for everything, despite being beaten down by a bunch of normal human rioters for simply looking like a foreigner. He still blames mutants for his problems, and thus he fails. Luke Cage, the former Power Man and now the current mayor of New York City, he is asked a question by a random reporter, the progenitor in disguise, asking him a simple question that is asked of many politicians, both real and fictitious, and like many of them, real or fictional, he answers the same way as they always do. He deflects, so he fails. This is listed as a fail by default, and while it may seem harsh, we have to remember what the progenitor favors. He favors action, not inaction. The will to face life, happiness, sadness, death, judgment, whatever, head on, not waiting for a better time that's convenient for you. It's harsh, but it's on brand for the progenitor. Thor is judged worthy for no other reason than the inscription on his hammer. Odin's magic has essentially saved Thor from being judged harshly. There's very likely an allegory for nepotism and privilege, and I don't know, I feel there's far more important things to talk about with this issue than that, and it would just make this video even longer if I talked about it, so we're just gonna move on for once. Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, is offered a chance to save her family, to take them somewhere far away from celestial judgment by her favorite superhero, Captain Marvel. Not only does Kamala deny this offer, but attacks Carol, demanding to know where the real Carol Danvers is. She never sees her actual judgment because she's too busy trying to pummel this fake Captain Marvel, but we know it's a pass. Kamala is selfless and willing to throw her own life on the line no matter what. This is what the progenitor feels every aspiring hero, for the most part, should be. And then there's Katrina, the human who is tied to the Hex Eternal Rayaka Centaurus, and she fails, mostly for a simple act of blowing off going back and giving a tip to the hotel staff after she initially forgot. Something that I know many people have done, myself included, but she's not even really that far away. She's like 50 meters, or I'm sorry, 164 feet for us filthy Americans. This is almost too harsh, but it's not that. that got her judged harshly. She's a slacktivist. She tries to do the right thing, but she's never gone all in. She only dips her toe in, never truly devoting herself to a cause. We saw this with the character Sally in A.X.E. Death to the Mutants #2. It's the same thing. Yet again, this and blowing off turning around to give a tip to someone is not really a stretch. Xavier fails as I predicted he would in my video for Immortal X-Men #6, and just as he said he was probably too busy to notice being judged, it was in fact true. The progenitor came to him in the form of his son Legion, and just as he always does, he blew off his son and was judged appropriately. Not just for this, but the lackluster attitude he's almost always had towards his own son. His brand of love is closer to hate than anything else for a person he should care for more than most, so he fails. Kamala, the wife of Arjun, the man who died in A.X.E. Judgment Day #2 so that the Hex sign, the Mimitar, could be reborn after having been destroyed on Krakoa, is once again not judged. But the reasoning this time that the progenitor is not judging Kamala isn't because the progenitor wants to wait to see what happens next, as it was in Judgment Day #3, but because he knows she would judge him back. And this is one of the few times we ever actually see the progenitor question himself. We've seen him give pause before, but not like this. Regardless, I think he would judge her favorably. I would want to believe that. She's tried to keep a brave face, as he noted before, trying to appear as though she's stronger than she is in the wake of her husband's sudden death. She's trying to do the best that she can under difficult circumstances with celestial judgment looming over her. One could make an argument that she's not embracing the grief and that she's medicating herself to get through it all, but is that really a terrible thing? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but grief is a very powerful thing, and I feel it's something that Kieran Gillen was wise to not render judgment on in this book. Grief is difficult. Sometimes you grieve forever. It never really ever truly ends, and it's not as if she's running from it 100%. I mean, she is kind of facing it, but she's doing it in her own way, so. But I feel like regardless, I don't think the progenitor should ever judge her for any of it. Starbrand, unsurprisingly, gets a pass because, like Kamala Khan, she throws herself into battle head on, even when it's only in her head. She does what heroes are supposed to do, protect people, even at her own peril, and she's just a kid. I mean, technically she's a teenager, but still, she was literally a baby not even a year ago. And through the nature of the Starbrand powers, as well as other wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey shenanigans and Mephisto's meddling, she has become a teenager and will likely be an adult by next year. And yet, she is already a better human than most humans. Daniela, the human tied to the Hex Eternal Fiaca the Harpsicus, has finally noticed the world crumbling around her. She's witnessed the rioting in the streets, and maybe now she understands this is worse than anyone really truly gets, that the heroes aren't just gonna save the day, and goes home to her mother to be with her in what could very possibly be her final moments. This gets a pass. Some might think it's weird, but it actually makes sense if you consider how hard she's worked. She doesn't let the troubles of the world stop her from striving to live her best life, even if she probably works too much to enjoy it. The girl literally has, I think, 2 or 3 different jobs, but she's still striving for something, and that is far from inaction, and that's exactly what the progenitor loves to see. And Dr. Doom, I feel, probably got the most entertaining judgments of them all, if for no other reason than he's posed with a simple challenge. Admit Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four, is smarter than you, and you pass. And Doom simply laughs and walks away. Even when faced with celestial judgment, Doom will not admit that Reed is smarter than him, and it's so on brand for Dr. Doom. The progenitor cannot help but pass him anyway. This is one of those moments where I pretty much just kind of had to sit back and just laugh my ass off at this, because why would the Celestial judge Doom any differently? I mean, think about it. If Dr. Doom was challenged, they said, yes, you have to admit that you are not as good as your arch rival at something to justify your own existence. Doom would never do that. He would never lower himself to do that, especially to Reed Richards. I mean, he wouldn't do it for anyone, but Reed? Oh, hell no. He would never, ever admit Reed was smarter than him, even if it was true. Now we get back to Jada, the human tied to the eternal hex, Tetratrona. She has been struggling with the death of her daughter, and the grief was made even worse, learning that mutants can resurrect themselves, but not her child. And while she was at the protest against mutants in A.X.E. Judgment Day #1, she quickly realized that it wasn't mutants to blame for the death of her daughter, as well as her daughter not being able to be brought back to life, and that what the other humans and Eternals wanted to do to mutants was wrong, and she sees all the destruction around her and sees this is wrong too, and unsurprisingly, she passes. She's been incredibly compassionate over the course of these past 3 issues of Judgment Day, and nothing has changed here. She is, yes, a sad, grieving mother. She passes because she refused to dwell on it and moved on. Well, not necessarily with her life, but she's not letting herself fall into eternal grief. This is, once again, the type of stuff the Progenitor likes to see, which honestly makes his lack of judgment on Kamala seem even stranger, but considering the fact that Jada's daughter was not necessarily a very recent death, at least it's implied, it was not as recent a death as the death of Kamala's husband, Arjun. So that might be why the Progenitor is allowing a little bit of a buffer between, the moment of that death and how Kamala is reacting to everything in this precise moment. That's kind of the way I'm willing to go with this, but at the same time, yeah, it still makes it seem kind of weird that he's like, no, you're good. Next up is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, Daredevil. And the irony of a devout Catholic dressing up as a devil to save the world isn't lost on the Progenitor. And he recognizes that Daredevil is a guy who lives by certain standards. He has a code of honor and ethics, and because of that, it also means that he's very likely failed those same rules that he sets for himself, and he passes judgment on Daredevil and he fails him. But the thing is, Daredevil recognizes that he has failed, and yet he goes on with his life, fighting the good fight. The Progenitor literally shows up to him seemingly as Jesus with a crown of thorns, as he mentions, and Daredevil completely understands why he's been judged harshly, and yet he still fights the good fight. He's still out there throwing hands in these streets and trying to make sure that the world is safe. And that's honestly why I love Daredevil so much. Miles Morales gets a thumbs up from Peter Parker. He doesn't even realize he's being judged most likely, but Miles is a good kid, and like Kamala Khan and the Star Brand, despite being younger heroes, they get it. This is most likely a commentary by Gillen on the younger generation being the one that will likely save us all in the end. While yes, there are some idiots out there from that generation as a whole, they're the ones who are going to carry us in the end because they've witnessed the mistakes of adults before them, and hopefully won't commit the same sins. But now that I've said that, let's talk about Kinta. Kinta, the human tied to the Hex Eternal Themix, maybe not so much. All he cares about is video games and very likely cursing out adults on Fortnite at 3 a.m. on a school night, no less. He has yet to touch his homework, but in the end, he's doing what makes him happy in the short life that he's lived. The Progenitor isn't going to judge him for being a kid. He lets it go and decides to let the rest of the world seal Kinta's fate. The Progenitor claims he's not a monster for doing this, but that seems pretty monstrous to me. This is one of more than a few times he's reserved judgment or refused judgment, which by his own definition seems a little hypocritical, but at the same time, I feel like you say you don't want to be a monster and judge this kid for doing what he's doing, but at the same time, you're gonna allow this kid's fate to be left to other people who will very likely damn him just the same. If that's not passing the buck, I don't know what is. Over the course of this comic, we noticed that Eros has been meeting with various leaders across the world. We also know that he's met with Sebastian Shaw as of Immortal X-Men #6. We see him go to Wakanda and speak with Black Panther. We see him go to the White House to meet with the president. He's going to all these different people across the globe and he's talking to them, but more importantly, something that Gillen makes sure to point out to the reader is that he's listening. He's listening to the things that the people want, their hopes, their fears, their desires, everything, because as many people may or may not know, it's actually a part of his power set. Not only can he make people do what he wants them to do, but he's also really good at hearing what people want. Whereas his brother Thanos is very unempathetic at the best of times, Eros is the polar opposite of that. He listens. He wants to hear what people have to say. He wants to hear their heart's desires. And I guess the question is now, what was it that he and Sebastian Shaw were discussing in Immortal X-Men number 6? We know they were discussing the sharing of technology, no more, no less. The humans would very likely receive more mutant technology, though what was never specified. But possibly this could be more Krakoan flowers that can do more things for human life. Maybe even give them access to Krakoan gates, possibly even mutant resurrection. Whatever it was that they were going to give them, he seemed to believe that maybe the children were the ones who should receive it, not anyone else. Now, once again, none of this is set in stone. All we know is what Eros is offering to the world. He's telling the people of Earth that this is what he's going to give them. This is what the mutants are going to give them, that the mutants and Eternals are going to come together and work together to try and build a paradise, not just for themselves, but for everyone else. And as the mutants would share their technology, Eternals would share their celestial technology. Though what exactly is not really made clear. That could mean anything from weapons of mass destruction, which is unlikely given the current circumstances, to life-saving technology, which is probably far more likely, and maybe even various other things that would make human life far more comfortable. Either way, Eros promises the world a paradise. But can Eros really promise these things? Are they his to give? Because at the end of the day, he doesn't speak for all Eternals. Druig speaks for all Eternals, and what he wants right now is death to all deviants and mutants. To do what Eros wants to do, he would have to be Prime Eternal, and Druig is not willing to give up that seat. But that's exactly what Eros is ready to take from him. To take the seat of Prime Eternal, something made even easier by the other Eternals either being trapped in the resurrection process or fighting Druig's war against the mutants and being too busy to join in the Unamine. And then something amazing happens. The Eternals have in the past formed Unamines with normal humans, and while mutants should be no surprise, it's still somewhat surprising to see in this issue. Granted, not every mutant, but all of Krakoa's telepaths. Jean is flanked by what I would consider to be a murderer's row of Marvel's most prolific telepathic mutants, from Charles Xavier and Cassandra Nova to Exodus and Mr. Sinister, Emma Frost alongside her Stepford Cuckoos, all the way to Amal Farouk, the former Shadow King, even Hope Summers, Prestige, even Mentalo. Even characters we don't typically associate with telepathy, like Proteus, are present and accounted for. More than enough mutants to tip the votes in Eros' favor, despite Druig's best efforts. But remember how Uranus has been wanting out of his cage since before Judgment Day even started, and Druig wouldn't let him out, even with Uranus offering to end mutants once and for all, the very thing that Druig is trying to do himself. The problem is that Druig hasn't been desperate enough to do it, but he knows he's about to lose everything that he strived for, and Uranus promises to give him his vote. Uranus' vote alone would be powerful enough, if for no other reason than he is one of the original Eternals, meaning he speaks for his entire Eternal faction. More than enough to lock Druig as Prime Eternal for now until the end of days. And Druig bites. He wants to put assurances in place to secure Uranus from going too far and making certain that he's not free permanently. But there's no time. Eros is on the verge of securing everything, and Druig has no choice but to release Uranus from the exclusion with no protocols in place to put him back. No leash, no timer, nothing to stop Uranus from doing whatever he wants. And the last thing he wants is to help Druig. Besides, he has excess deviation to correct. Uranus unleashes a litany of portals, reminiscent of that on your left Avengers Endgame moment. Portals as far as the eye can see, and not unlike what he did on Araco, only this time, instead of unleashing a fraction of his weapons, he unleashes everything. This, I personally felt, was wrapped up way too quick. For Uranus to be as powerful as he is, I'm hoping this gets fleshed out in the next issue, or perhaps in the tie-in issue, Death to the Mutants #3, but even with the combined efforts of Iron Man, Magneto, and Storm, it would have been nice to see more of this battle, but regardless, the battle spreads. Uranus rains destruction across the globe, from America to France to Australia, only for it to end by Tony Stark turning Uranus's portals and weapons against him, unleashing an onslaught of portals, firing off devastating rays of energy that bring Uranus to his knees. Somehow the Eternals have put Uranus back in his cell. I feel like that's something that will also likely be addressed in Death to the Mutants #3. What we do know is that he isn't dead per se, or at least if he did die, he has already begun reassembling himself. It's implied that even though we saw him seemingly vaporize, we do see him dropped to bended knee and still smoking before Storm and Magneto after he's waylaid by his own weapons. So he very likely either has been resurrected or he's simply reviving himself of his own free will. I'm thinking he's actually reviving himself, and in this moment they were able to actually take his body and put it back in the exclusion. And for their efforts, Magneto falls after the injuries that he suffered in X-Men Red #5 at the hands of Uranus, having his heart ripped from his chest, with the only thing keeping him alive was his power over magnetism, constantly keeping what was left of his heart going, and Storm's added power fueling him. This is a massive blow to mutant kind, not simply because the progenitor believes he was the best of them all, passing him as his own life had failed him, but because Magneto erased his Cerebro backup. He cannot be resurrected, at least not through normal means, and he dies in Storm's arms as a better man than when we first met him in 1963's X-Men #1, but not before receiving celestial judgment, seeing his long dead daughter Anya giving him a thumbs up. We've actually talked about Anya before, so I'm not gonna rehash it here, but just know that Anya is a daughter who died in a burning house, and he was stopped from being able to save her by an angry mob when they discovered that he was a mutant. This is something that goes all the way back to Uncanny X-Men #304, and I've talked about it before. I'll try to remember what video I actually talked about it in, and I'll try and link it up here somewhere in the top if you want to go check that out. That said, Uranus has been defeated, but Icarus, despite wanting death for all Eternals, doesn't want Uranus to be killed, much less he doesn't want the mutants to kill Uranus either, because he would be resurrected once more, and yet another human would die to give life to the most deadly Eternal who ever lived. Icarus, for being an arrow, as Kieran Gillen has described him since he first started writing the Eternals, Icarus has changed. He's become not only selfless, as he always was for the most part, but he's become compassionate, knowing the Eternals owe mutant kind a debt that they may never be able to actually repay, but the Eternals will pay it. And the progenitor knows Icarus means everything that he's saying, giving him a thumbs up. And I was just as surprised as Tony Stark when Cersei received her judgment that the progenitor gave her a thumbs down. And for what exactly? It's hard to say, and maybe it's something we've yet to witness, but I think we actually have. The progenitor says that he's seen enough, right, as Cersei agrees that Icarus was right about owing the mutants a debt. But he knows something we don't, I believe. It's likely he realizes that Cersei is lying, that she doesn't believe in what Icarus says, but is merely agreeing just to keep things moving. In the end, Eros has kept his promise. Now that he's Prime Eternal, he declares to the progenitor that they will change the Earth together. Humanity, mutants, Eternals, deviants, whatever. They will choose love over war, but it's far too late for that. The progenitor believes humanity will never change. Not just normal humans, but everyone else too. They'll always promise to do what's right another day. Always put off the change that was promised before. And he's not wrong. Even in the really real world, how many times have we seen strangers, family, friends, loved ones, whoever, make a promise they're gonna do better, but tomorrow, I'll do the right thing another day. I'll change for the better tomorrow. I'll do my best next time. The progenitor is tired of hearing tomorrow. And while Eros believes that love will save them all, as far as the progenitor is concerned, love don't live here anymore. This late in the game, you need a lot more than love to get through it all. And the progenitor unleashes a wave of annihilation no normal person could survive. Even Captain America, likely saved by his shield and his shield alone, realizes this is the end.